Good afternoon, Loopers. Welcome to the second of our 4 Lunch and Learns. This is a series where we give our sponsors the opportunity to tell you a little bit more about their products and services and how they can help you on the Great Loop. So welcome. This is Kim Russo, the director of AGLCA. I think by now most of you have attended some of the sessions, so you know that part already. So welcome. We are going to go ahead and jump right into it. So I would like to introduce you all to Stephen Winter, and he is our first presenter. He is with Nebo Global. Stephen, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Kim. And let me just click a few buttons. So I hope everyone can see the screen there. Kim, I know you'll jump in and tell me if I haven't shared it correctly. So I'm presuming I have. So thanks very much, everyone. What I'm going to show you today is a slightly briefer version of the webinar that we did a month or 2 ago. So if you attended that, apologies, you'll probably see much of the same thing again. But I presume that there would be some people here today that didn't attend that, and maybe people that are new to looping and would like to know what this Nebo thing is. So we'll get into it. So we'll be covering very quickly what Nebo is, where you can find out more things about Nebo, things that I've forgotten to tell you today. What you see when you open Nebo, logging voyages, what Nebo Geofences are very briefly, the daily log, the monthly report, how to perhaps share your voyage and your experiences with people left behind, the AGLCA boat icon, messaging, and the Nebo Tracker. So I'm going to try and zoom through these things. That wasn't a pun, by the way. So what is Nebo? So you use Nebo for a couple of things, and some people use it particularly for one of these reasons. Some people use it for all of them. So it was primarily designed to log voyages automatically and give you a nice log and a monthly report and so forth. It also lets you connect with people on the water, and clearly that's very important while you're looping. You want to see where other loopers are and maybe ask them for some tips and tricks. And it helps you stay safe on the water as well for the same sort of reasons. So you can get to a tutorial on our website in the main menu. It'll run through it very quickly, some of the things that I'm going to cover today, but there's also a very extensive frequently asked questions section on the website as well. So go and have a look at that to your heart's content. Now, when you open up Nebo, the first thing you'll see is basically where you are at the moment. If you zoom out, as we have on the screen on the left there, you'll see clusters of boats. So those are all people that have been using Nebo recently. And you can see clusters of 50 and 20 and 2 and 4 and so forth. And it's interesting to watch those clusters move around through the year. Now, if you use your fingers and pinch on the map and zoom in, then you'll eventually zoom down right down to individual boats. And you can see that on the right there, we've zoomed down to a boat, Sand Dollar, and I've tapped on it. And I can see information about that boat. You'll also notice that the AGLCA logo is showing for that boat, and we'll talk a bit about that later. So a couple of things that you can do in this, what we call a standby screen. You can search for boats. So there I've typed in Sand Dollar so that it zoomed in on the Sand Dollar boat. Now, one unfortunate thing that we haven't fixed as yet is how to handle boats with the same name. So if there are multiple boats called Sand Dollar, then it wouldn't zoom in and find that boat. So that's unfortunate. We'll find a way around that eventually. As I mentioned, you can view details about the individual boat, and send a message. And you can tap the Prepare for Voyage button and get ready to go. So logging a voyage, as I mentioned, Prepare for Voyage, tap that button, and you can choose which boat. If you're lucky enough to have more than one boat, you can choose one of the ones you've got registered. You can complete a startup checklist, and you have full editing capability on that checklist. You can decide to check off what you want to, whether it's fuel or beer that is of your concern. You can even choose which skipper you're using today. Generally, people stay with one. And then click Start, and you're off and running. So when you're underway, Nebo isn't a navigation app. It's for logging and recording your voyage, but we still give you some information about what's happening on the water at the time. So at the top there, you can see your speed that you're travelling. You can see the duration and the distance that you've travelled. We put a couple of weather forecasts below the speed and other information there. One for, I think, 2 hours in advance, and one's for 4 hours in advance. And you can see your track coloured by speed there on the map as you're progressing along. You can also do things like take a photo and message people, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Okay, quickly before we have a look at the actual logs that Nebo prepares and emails to you, I thought we'd better just quickly mention what Nebo Geofences are. So behind the scenes, stored on our servers, are many thousands of geofences. They're polygons that we've compiled around harbours and marinas and across bridges and so forth around the world. So the map on the top left is part of Greece, showing some geofences that we've put in place over there. And the one on the bottom right you might recognise is Sydney Harbour. There's the Sydney Harbour Bridge and the Opera House. And that's just there as an example to show actually what geofences are and what we're using them for at the moment. So if your boat comes up Sydney Harbour and crosses that dotted yellow line, then we'll be able to record the fact that you've arrived at that geofence. So you imagine you heading down the loop and you enter a marina that we've put a geofence around, then we can record the fact that you arrived at that marina at that particular time, or you went under that particular bridge at this particular time. So that at the moment is how we're using those geofences. In the future, we might like to use that for publishing information that's useful to you when you actually cross into a geofence boundary or approach one. So you can probably imagine that there's many things that we could leverage these geofences for, but at the moment we're just using it to provide log entries into your logs. So let's have a look at that. So this is Herb's boat, Phantom, and you can see that he's, I think you can see my mouse moving around. He started his voyage down here and ended up here over a particular day. So this is a report that is emailed to you when you finish a voyage, what we call a voyage. You could call it a trip, I guess. If you start motoring along at 8 in the morning and stop for lunch at 2, that's considered by us as a voyage, and you'll get an email straight away. If you then start up again an hour later and motor on through the afternoon and into the evening, then that's another voyage as well. But when you finish that second or third or fourth voyage of a day, you'll receive a daily report that gathers all of that information up into one. So you can see you get a map with some basic statistics about distance and speeds and so forth. The next page will show you more detail of where you've been. So this, if you can see that, I hope it's not too small, it says started voyage at Isle of Hope Marina. So that's where Herb started a voyage within a geofence that we've named. We've inserted some weather and he's departed that geofence, passed under a bridge, past some of the statute mile markers and so forth. And we're using that to build up this detailed log, and you'll get that every day. Okay. If you take photos along the way using Nebo, then it'll insert little icons where those photos were taken and insert the actual photos as well. And you can put in descriptions and so forth as well. Okay, that's the daily log. Now, every month, on the first day of the next month, you'll receive a monthly summary of all of the trips that you've recorded in Nebo. So this is actually one of the this is a boat that I share with, with my son, well, sharing, he doesn't do any of the paying, and another guy. So you can see that I've used this boat on these days. I've undertaken these voyages. There's the the names, the from and the tos, and all of the various stats. So it adds up how many hours I've done, how many hours Oscar's done, and how many hours Nathan has done, and distances and maximum speeds and so forth. It's a really good record of how you've used that, how you've used your boat in that month. And you can see the totals down there as well, 18 voyages. And this is a new boat, so we've only been running it for this year. So that's the monthly report. Now, if you want to share your voyage while you're underway, because you've got people at home that might want to see where you are. So one of the easiest ways is to simply forward your daily report to them. So this is an email that you receive at the end of the day or at the end of a voyage with a link to download the log, and there's no reason why you can't send that on to anyone that you'd like to. And then they will be able to download the same log that you see, and like the one that we just looked at for Herb. So here's one of our boat over here in Perth, Australia, zooming around, not zooming, going at 8 knots around the river. So that's one way of keeping people abreast of where you are. There's another way that allows you to show people where you are at the moment. So it's a live feed effectively. So, and it's what we call Track Me. And it allows you to send a URL, basically the address of a website specifically for your boat, and you can send it to them via mail or WhatsApp or whatever you've got on your phone. And then they will see a web page like this one over on the right. So it doesn't show you at this stage anyway the track that you've been. It's just showing the location of the boat at the moment and the weather. Now, if you're compiling a blog for your trip around the loop, then you could just embed this once into that blog, and whoever's looking at that web page will see that map and your current location. So that's quite a useful way of keeping people aware of where you are. And of course, you can also just ask your friends to download Nebo. They don't even have to register a boat, but they can see where you and everyone else that's using Nebo are at the moment. And they can send you messages and so forth as well. So those are some easy ways to share your voyage. So this AGLCA logo, you can see over here on the left, there's a boat that has the logo and there's a boat that doesn't. So most of the users, most of the users in Nebo just have that plain little boat icon. AGLCA members get a much fancier one with the logo in it. And the way you make sure that happens is to ensure that the email address that you've got registered within Nebo, the one that you receive your daily reports at, is the same as the one that you've registered in the AGLCA system. If you have any issues about what that actually means, then we've made some instructions that we can send to you to make sure that that's an easy process. Okay, so messaging other boats. I thought it's worthwhile just putting a screen here to show the sort of things that you can do. So you can tap on a boat, click send a message, and if you've already been exchanging messages with that boat, then the messages will just go through. If it's a boat that you haven't messaged before, they'll get the choice to either accept your message or to block you. So, we have to look after people's privacy in that way. But once that's done, then you can message away, and you can see here that we're sending messages and sending photos and so forth. And these little buttons here let you either download that image to your device gallery and even to add it to the log as well. So that's messaging. Now, I think I'm well within time. Just a couple of slides at the end about the Nebo Tracker, because more and more people are using it. I use one all the time because I don't have to try and remember to start Nebo. So do you remember when we looked at the slides earlier that to start a voyage, you had to manually prepare for voyage and then hit the go button. Now, sometimes you forget. I certainly did. and then you don't get that part of your trip or that whole day. So it's the idea of the GPS, of the Nebo Tracker, is that it takes that uncertainty out of it. Whenever your boat moves, you'll be underway in Nebo, and at the end of the day, you'll get the daily report. You don't have to start Nebo on your phone. If your phone runs out of battery, it doesn't matter. This is self-contained. It's hooked into your 12-volt or 32-volt system on your boat. It has its own SIM card and a GPS in it. So, you know, it starts and stops the voyages automatically. The voyages go are synced to your account, even if you don't have the phone open. They'll be there the next time you open it. It has its own SIM card. You don't have to worry about data usage on your phone. You don't have to worry about keeping your phone charged or whether you even dropped it overboard and so forth. And it also has a nice feature. If your boat moves, you'll get a notification. So if you're not on it, you might want to find out where it's heading. So they're the reasons why we put the Nebo Tracker in place. Of course, it's a device and a SIM card, so it costs some money. So at the moment, the tracker is it's $175 and it's about $9 a month. We have to cover the cost of the SIM card within that charge. All data are included in that $9 a month charge. So you don't have to worry about any data throughput and so forth. Is it easy to install? Yes, absolutely. Connect it to the power source and hopefully you're off and away. And the AGLCA home port guys provide the distribution of those trackers and supplying them to members. So it's quick and easy, hopefully, to have them shipped once you place an order. Anyway, I would consider it. You know, the free app does everything that you could want it to do. The Nebo Tracker just automates that process, makes sure that you don't miss logging those days and so forth. And one more slide, which is unrelated to your looping, but to another perhaps bigger looper. We've hooked into an Iridium Go tracker that is on a little yacht that is circumnavigating the globe at the moment. This is a guy called John Sanders. He's a mad Australian. He's 81 years old. He turned 81 on this circumnavigation. He's done it 10 times before. We've hooked Nebo into his Iridium Go, and you can see his progress by going to our website if you're interested and clicking on that button there. You can see he's nearly come back to Australia. He's left Fremantle. That's where I am right now, over there. He's gone across the Indian Ocean, across the Atlantic, through Panama, and he's back here. And he's had the worst storms at this time in 30 years or so, he's saying on his logs. Anyway, an interesting loop. I thought you might be interested to have a look at that. Thanks, Kim. I've rushed it through and I've got 20 seconds to spare, I think.
Well done. Thank you, Stephen. And I also do want to thank you, Stephen, for joining us from Perth, Australia, because it is quite literally, I believe, the wee hours of the morning there.
Yes, it's midnight snack and learn.
Yes. So we do have several questions for you. So I'm going to go ahead and read through those. I may skip around a little bit depending on the ones that may be most important for the most number of people. So starting off with, I think we get this question quite frequently. Does Nebo have the ability to send your cumulative track and current position to a third-party website, such as a separate blog like WordPress?
Yeah. The cumulative bit, no. Look, I'm a little embarrassed because I don't know whether I promise it, but certainly say that we will do it. There's no way at the moment of doing a cumulative log. So I'll suggest it's a good idea. We'll do it at some stage. Yeah. I know all the loopers would love to see it.
Right. And you can essentially, you're receiving the daily reports, or well, the reports each time there's a voyage, correct? So while it's separate, you can actually combine those at the end to have somewhat of an overall track. I mean, it's not going to be one image, of course, but.
Yeah, look, what I would really love to be able to do is within the app, say, specify a date range, hit the report button, and it emails to you a report showing all of the tracks within that date range. So it could be for a month, it could be for 6 weeks, or it could be for a year, and then that would cater for everyone's needs. So keep bombarding me with emails to support at Nebo, and we'll get it there one day.
Okay.
Be rest assured, if we take that approach, then all of the voyages that you've done in the past, you'll be able to compile. So once we solve it, you'll be able to do it retrospectively.
Right, and that would be currently, this is kind of another question, are the reports saved to print them all off at the end of the loop? That's really on the user's end to save those as they come in by email, correct?
Yes, so, but they're all synced to the log section on your app, and from that section, you can request the reports to be sent to you again. So if you lose a report from your email, or whatever, you just lost it, you can go to the Nebo app, find the day in question, and press the report button. I think it's a PDF icon, and it'll be emailed to you immediately. Okay.
Also related to the reporting, we have a question that's asking if the trip image can be exported as a JPEG or a GIF or BMP or a PDF or any other graphic type format.
From the app?
They're not specific, so I'm not sure if the question is meaning from the app or from the PDF report that comes to them.
No to both of them. Apart from the app, you could do a screen capture, and I'm not really sure why you would want to do it from the PDF. But you could take a screen capture once you've put it onto your screen for sure. Yeah.
Okay, we have a few questions related to what happens with if you're out of cell range. So the specific questions: how does the recording of the track work when out of cell range, like crossing the Gulf Stream or cruising to the Bahamas?
So the way Nebo is designed is that when it's in the intent is that when you lose cellular coverage, it keeps logging, and when you get back into cellular coverage, it submits all of that data to the server so that it can be included in the daily reports and so forth. So sometimes we have some issues with that. If anyone does, then please let me know straight away, because there's some things that we can do to retrieve that data from your phone. Certainly with the tracker, it's got a nice buffer of data for up to, I think you can probably take up to about 10 days without being in cellular coverage, and then it it sends the data and we produce the reports. And I know that's working quite well.
Also kind of related to the location-based part of it, we have someone asking, how do they set the location in Nebo to their current location of their boat when they're not on the boat? Right now, I guess they're at home and the location is saying it's home.
Yeah, you can't.
Yeah. It's basing it on the GPS of your smartphone, right? So wherever that device is where it's, the tracker is kind of the best solution to that, is it'll track the boat.
I know what the people asking the questions, what the issue is, because I've done it before. You forget to stop logging a voyage on your boat. The boat's in the marina, and then you drive home, and then your boat is shown at home, which is not good. So what we've done initially for the tracker, this is slightly at a bit of a tangent. If the tracker is on a trailer boat and it's taken to someone's home, then we hide the location. We know that it's on land, so we're detecting the difference between land and water for the location of the tracker. We can do that also for the app-based voyages. We just need to decide, we just need to do some testing and decide whether that's the approach to take. So, because you don't really want people to be knowing where you live necessarily, and that the fact that you have a boat and all of those sort of things. So, yeah.
Okay. Question about privacy settings. What privacy is available within the app, and is any data shared with third parties?
So no data is shared with third parties. So no data is shared with third parties in the agreement, which of course no one ever reads when they sign up. We have the rights to do that, but we won't without letting people know. You can have my word on that. In terms of privacy whilst you're underway, you can choose to, we call it stealth mode, not have your boat details identifiable when you're on the water. So you'll see some boats when you open up Nebo that you click and you won't see any name or cap or skippers and so forth. So they're, in stealth mode. They're only visible to people that they have friended within Nebo. So yeah, you can hide your location.
Okay. Couple of questions about the tracker and the way it notifies you if the boat moves. So one is asking whether Nebo's ability to notify you if your boat moves when you're not on it, does that work if the engine is not started? So if it's towed away or lines are cut and it drifts away, will you still be notified?
Yes, it has an internal battery. So it knows. So it waits when movement starts, it doesn't initially use the GPS, it uses an accelerometer. So it wakes the GPS up and then it starts tracking. So yes, there's the short answer, you will know even if the power's off or the engines aren't running. Yep. So just on that, we really recommend if you do get a tracker, you put it onto a permanent DC circuit, not allied to to an ignition circuit, so that the batteries are always keeping nicely charged up.
Okay. And a related question, does Nebo work as an anchor monitor when you're anchored?
No, it doesn't. I'd love it to. So that's always on my mind because I actually want it as well. In fact, I was talking to the guys that designed the hardware for the tracker recently, and for X $1,000s, we could get the firmware changed so that we could potentially use it as an anchor alarm. And I think the tracker in particular, much more so than the app, would be really good as an anchor alarm because it's always on the boat. If you go off to a restaurant or whatever on shore, you've got your phone with you. You don't have to leave a device behind running as an anchor alarm. And you'll get the message if your boat drifts. So it is something that occupies my mind and I'd love to solve it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And kind of, I think probably the last one we're going to have time for about the tracker itself is, does it draw power when the engine is off? And if so, how many MA?
Look, I don't know, but it's really little. Please, whoever's asking that, send an email to support@nebo.global and I've got the numbers here, but it's a very low amount. Certainly the boat that I showed you the monthly report for, it sits there for up to 6 weeks without doing anything. There's a tracker on that and there's just no issue with the battery staying charged.
Okay. And kind of related to that, Stephen, what's the expected response time on support requests?
For the tracker in particular, or just Nebo in general?
For Nebo in general, we have someone who submitted a ticket and hasn't received a response as of yet, so they're just wondering what the expectation should be on responses to that support email address.
Yeah, I would say 2 to 3 days. So if you haven't got, it's difficult. Yeah, it's a free app.
Yeah, exactly.
Try to be responsive.
Okay, so if they haven't received a response in a few days, do you recommend they follow up that perhaps it wasn't received, or should they sit tight and wait?
No, definitely follow up. Okay. Don't wait 3 days.
Okay.
Send another email.
We're kind of running low on time. I'm just scanning through the rest of the questions. There's 2 people wondering what Nebo stands for and a little bit of the story behind Nebo, if you can share that.
Yeah, no, look, there isn't a really good story. I just wanted a name that didn't really mean anything, a bit like, Google and so forth. Then I don't know, came up with that. It sounded a bit like Nemo, Finding Nebo. Anyway.
Okay.
It's a mountain referenced in the Bible, I think. It's also an outback town in Australia, but they're unrelated.
Okay. This is going to have to be the final one. And I'm not sure that you can answer that. I'm not sure that I can answer this one, but what percentage of loopers are on Nebo? Percentages gets a little tough. I don't know if you know as of today, Stephen, how many loopers are on Nebo.
No, I don't. Yeah, because I'll only know the ones that are on Nebo. I can find that out. Kim, perhaps I'll give those numbers to you, and anyone can, if you want to distribute them, that's up to you.
Yeah, like I said, that's a good question. Percentages, I think, on that case will be a little bit misleading because the actual percentage of AGLCA members that are actively cruising right now, you know, is not the entire membership. I don't know what that percentage is either, but it's a relatively small percentage. So probably just knowing the number of loopers on Nebo probably would be helpful. And of course, there are some on Nebo who aren't currently cruising. They may be harbor hosts to kind of keep tabs on when people are getting close to them, so they can reach out to you and offer you some assistance if you need it when they get to their port. So we're going to hold it there. Stephen, there were 2 or 3 more questions we didn't get to. If you don't mind, I'll email those to you, and then we can feed the answers out to those who asked, and we can get the information out that way. But Stephen, I want to thank you for joining us. Feel free if you would like to finish up your midnight snack and we will let you go. And again, we thank you for your sponsorship and your support and for joining us today.
Thanks very much, Kim.